If you've ever had trouble following directions, then you can relate to Moses. In Numbers chapter 20, the children of Israel are grumbling and complaining because they're thirsty and there's no water around. So God tells Moses, bring all the people around this big rock, and when you have them there and have their attention, I want you to speak to the rock and it will produce water. The problem is Moses was so frustrated and angry with the people that by the time he got to the rock and everyone's watching him, he raises his staff and he strikes the rock twice. Now, he didn't follow God's directions. God was gracious and merciful and provided the water for the people anyway, but he told Moses, hey, because you didn't follow my directions, you can't go into the promised land. Seems pretty harsh for just hitting a rock a couple of times. But there were two big problems with what Moses did. First, his actions drew more attention to him than it did to God. Right before Moses strikes a rock, he says something like, shall we bring water from this rock? And he's kind of taking attention, and he raises his arm in kind of a flamboyant, look at me kind of way. He just drew more attention to himself than he did to God. But the second problem was Moses' actions made it look like he was the one that was accomplishing this miracle. I mean, God needed the people to trust his provision, and Moses looked like he was the one making the provision. His actions made it hard for the people to clearly determine, is this a Moses thing or is this a God thing? And so this was what caused Moses so much problem. And you and I can think, Moses, what are you thinking? How could you mess up so much? But before we get too smug with ourselves, we need to ask ourselves a few questions. One, has there ever been a time when we've drawn more attention to ourselves than we've drawn to God? Two, has there ever been a time when we've acted like God was more at our beck and call than we at his? And three, has there ever been times in our life when we raised our hands more than we raised our faith? What is that thing that's in front of you this week that God's given you clear direction about, but it's just hard for you to follow his direction? My prayer for you this week is that God will give you clarity of direction and that he will also give you the patience to follow the direction and wait for the result. Here's to having that kind of week this week. I'll see you next week.